Okay. And here's Alexis.
So thanks for having me. I am not clearly a tech person. I'm not an AI person. I am a food systems expert. So what I'm going to talk a little bit about today is how AI is currently being used in Hawaii's food systems and what kind of questions the food industry is asking and should be asking to continue to maximize the positive impact of these tools to succeed in feeding the future. The food industry is hard. This is an industry that deals with products that are bulky, heavy, fragile, perishable. It demands a tremendous amount of space, a tremendous amount of labor, a tremendous amount of energy. Hawaii is the most isolated population center on the planet. Grocery stores in Hawaii have a profit margin, or nationwide have a profit margin between 3 and 5%. So feeding this state in particular is really, really hard. And the businesses that do this need to maximize every tool at their disposal to make sure that they can do that successfully. So for purposes of this presentation, I'm mainly talking about the post-agricultural and more specifically even the post-manufacturing sector of the food system. So that's like retailers, distributors, suppliers, and some manufacturers a little bit as well. So the current set of questions, most of us started using AI as like a question answer machine, right? You give it a question and it spits out an answer. I think my favorite description of AI was, when it popped up that someone asked AI about what was the first animal on Mars, and it said like, oh, horses on Mars, and everyone was like, this is infuriating. And someone was like, I don't know what the problem is, lies my cousin told me machine is working perfectly. So that was kind of the, how a lot of us were using AI initially. You ask it a question, it spits out an answer, you take that answer no matter what it is. But in the food industry and in all industries, what we're seeing, right, is that people have moved way beyond that. We're already past that. And really, the people that are going to succeed are the people that are answering questions or asking questions about AI. So what can it do? How are my competitors using it? How should I be using it? What are the risks? So these are kind of the current set of questions that I'm going to look at a little bit. And then we're also going to look at what are the next set of questions. Oops, sorry. I've got two computers going. So right now in the food industry, there's you can really broadly break AI into 3 categories. So descriptive, predictive, and creative. Descriptive is just give me data. How are things? How were things? Predictive is obviously how are things going to be? Predict some data for me. And creative is make me something. So that can be content. That can be also be a system, a process, a procedure. So if we're really going to maximize the usage of AI, we're going to use all these 3 things in conjunction. So for a food retailer, that could look something like, tell me what was my best-selling SKU for the last 6 months. Tell me what are the price predictions for that SKU for the next 3 months, and help me create a pricing plan to maximize profits for that product. So this is just one application. Some of the tools that are being really maximized in AI in the food systems right now are inventory management and waste reduction. Spatial AI, these are all super interesting, and I'll try not to go into rabbit holes of any of them, but spatial AI is amazing. The difference between having something that can look at a warehouse, look at your inventory all at once, and tell you what your stock is, rather than scanning individual barcodes, is incredible. Scheduling. AI can see patterns, it can make predictions that we as people can't see. That we're inside of it. As a scheduler, you're scheduling yourself too. You're inside of this. You can't see the patterns, you can't see the overarching thing. This is hugely important for efficiency. Price comparison apps. This is really interesting because we think of this, a lot of us probably use these already. We think of this as a customer-facing thing. This is vital for businesses as well. You need to know how your competitors are pricing things. Media measurement. This is a big one for any industry that's public-facing. Understanding how your media is engaging with your customers. Enhanced contamination detection. I'll talk a little bit more about this area later, but this is huge. Temperature measurement, bacteria level measurement, all of these things are vital for the food industry. And product tracing. I was so glad to follow the last speaker because blockchain, one of the first applications of blockchain was food tracing. So how can we trace food? And it's one of those things that a few people saw the potential 5-10 years ago even, or not 10, but when blockchain first came out, and it didn't really take hold until pretty recently in the food industry. And then this moves into supply chain management. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So these are the ones that have high potential for high impact changes, especially in Hawaii. Food safety and supply chain efficiency. If we use these tools broadly and correctly within the food industry, they have potential for really, really dramatic change. AI, so in Hawaii, we have about 30% food insecurity. So maximizing efficiency in our food systems is of monumental importance. It's not just about price reduction, it's about making sure that we are getting food into the state, around the state, and to the people that it needs to get to. And nationwide, there are still tens of, even with all the state and national level safety protocols that we have in place, there are still tens of thousands of instances of serious foodborne illnesses every year. AI has the potential to dramatically reduce those numbers. So, for Hawaii, as I said, efficiency is key. And Dick mentioned this also and touched on a lot of these points, which is great. As a lot of you probably know, we import about 80% of our food, and that it's really hard to nail that number down specifically. People ask me all the time, and it's really hard to get an accurate number, but it's about 80%. So supply chain management is crucial. Making food transportation more effective and more efficient means controlling food prices. I won't say making food less expensive, because that's probably never going to happen, but it can help, it can help level the food prices here. But one thing people don't know is that moving food around Hawaii, even locally grown food, is often as complicated as moving food into the state. So getting food from Big Island, from Maui, from Hawaii to here is often as complicated and as expensive as getting food from California here. So when we're talking about maximizing efficiency and supply chain management, we're not just talking about more imports. We're talking about improving our food sovereignty in Hawaii. To be able to better feed our state from within our state. And so we have to also look at cost-benefit analysis, right? Is it worth it? These are huge benefits we're talking about: reducing foodborne illnesses, helping control food prices, maximizing efficiency for food movement within and around Hawaii. But there are obviously, we still have to be really transparent and aware of the risks and problems of AI. There are energy use and water use issues. One of the latest estimates I heard was that every time you ask OpenAI a question, it uses 6 bottles of water. That's not a huge issue for us in Hawaii. We have a lot of pretty abundant fresh water. In other places, and where water is not controlled, where a company can just use water and people don't get any, that's a huge issue. And we have to be aware of that. Also, there's intellectual property use. And again, we're moving away from most of us of just using AI as a content creation machine, but there still are intellectual property implications. It's OpenAI, ChatGPT, these things they couldn't do what they do without having mined and essentially stolen millions of content, artworks, writing, all kinds of things from artists, writers, creators. So that's something that we have to kind of be aware of and reconcile when we're using these tools. I believe that how we use it matters. Not all AI usage is equal. I think that in the food industry, excuse me, the closest corollary is probably GMOs. It's a tool. It's neither inherently good or inherently bad. You can use GMOs to do things like create a bacteria that makes human insulin and saves millions and probably billions of lives over decades. Or you can use GMOs to, be a crazy supervillain and make a super weed or something. The tool itself is not inherently good or bad. It's how we use it that matters. There are also some really interesting usage issues to be aware of. So I wanted to be super clear on this. AI only knows information that we have put into computers. The information that we as humans put into computers is not everything, and it's not done impartially. So this is something really to be aware of when you're asking AI questions. What does it know? It only knows what we've told it. So a really kind of fun example of this is that currently, if you ask an OpenAI engine to show me a picture of a watch that shows the time of 6:30, this is what it's going to show you. And this doesn't show 6:30, it shows 10:10. The reason for this is because almost all images of watches that are in computers come from marketing sources. And if you're trying to sell a watch, it will usually say Rolex or something right there. So they always have the hands at 10:10 because it frames the logo. AI doesn't know this. It doesn't know that it's been fed images of watches in a very specific condition for a very specific reason. It has no idea. It just knows that according to all the data it has, this is what a watch looks like. So this is like, this was identified, the watch problem was identified I think a few months ago or earlier this year, and it's probably been solved already. I haven't actually even looked, I haven't asked it like in the last couple of weeks. But if it's not been solved already, it's probably gonna be solved soon. But it's just a good illustration that these machines do have blind spots. So this is kind of like an example of this in the food industry. If you made like a locally made energy drink with like maybe green coffee and guarana or something, and you ask OpenAI like, what does an energy drink customer look like? This is literally what I said. Can you show me a picture of an energy drink consumer? I left the question there, and this is what it showed me. So you're going to go and you're going to market your energy drink to this guy with his unsettling number of fingers, and you know, and that's who you're going to sell your energy drinks to, right? But if you ask it some different questions, if you ask, you know, even an OpenAI tool, I'm not even talking about specialized industry data tools. Like if you ask OpenAI, what consumers have the highest level of disposable income? They'll tell you it's Gen X-led households. If you ask who drinks the most energy drinks, it will still tell you it's, you know, I think it's a Gen Y or Y male. But if you ask OpenAI even, what demographic has the highest growth potential for functional beverage consumption, it will tell you it's young women. So we decided, as the food industry, the energy drink companies, energy drink marketing companies decided in the 90s that they were going to market energy drinks to young men. And they decided that for some culturally complex reasons that didn't really have anything to do with market data or spending habits or anything, and especially aren't really relevant now. But AI doesn't know that. But if you ask it these better questions, you're going to get better information about how to market your product. And that's just a very tiny example. And the more specialized tools you have, remember that one, the more, the better your answers are going to be. So this is really about asking the next set of questions. As we talked about, we're asking, what is AI doing? What can it do? What do I want to do? What are my competitors doing with it? The next set of questions are things like, what do I wish AI could do? What do I think AI needs to be able to do for my business? What does my business need from this tool? And we think of it, we've all been talking about it as a tool, and I believe that it is. But it's also, I think of it like a machine shop. You can start crafting, we as an industry can start crafting specialized tools for our businesses. Tools to, measure fish feeding, tools to, look at coffee bearers. Like, we can start looking at, it's not just about what can it do, what do I need it to do, and how do I make it do that? So that's the next set of questions. And I believe that if we continue to use AI responsibly, that it does justify the risks. And that is all for me, if anyone has any questions.
We have time for questions.
In the local market, who do you see as using AI well?
That would actually be proprietary type of information that I wouldn't be, because that's my numbers that I work for, so I probably wouldn't give that out. But there are people, I would say at every level of the food systems locally that are starting to use this with increasing positive impact, yes.
Does your association have food import data like produce and the fruits? Because that's something farmers always ask.
Again, that's it's proprietary data, and we've even no, it doesn't exist.
Okay.
It doesn't exist because so people ask how much food do we import versus how much do we produce. So I always give the example of macadamia nuts, right? So if you look at macadamia nuts, we produce a lot of macadamia nuts, but we're not consuming all of that. So if you're counting okay, how much food is consumed, if you want to, how do we even look at that? Do we do it by dollars? Do we do it by pounds? So if you're saying, okay, we produce this many pounds of food in Hawaii and we consume this many pounds of food in Hawaii, how do we count things like macadamia nut and coffee, which we're exporting a lot of, or you're buying them at Don Quixote or ABC stores, but you're taking them somewhere else. So it's hard to get that kind of data. And then those, import companies that do import, because there's so few of them, even if you looked at it in aggregate, even if we got the numbers in aggregate, it would be really easy to tell, oh, this company's importing that much, this company's importing that much, that company's importing that much. So it becomes like a proprietary issue, even if we try and look at it in aggregate. And it's actually the same for agriculture here because there's so few large farms. It's really hard to get that data without kind of violating proprietary privileges for those companies.
I know Puerto Rico uses commercial invoices for importation, inbound and not outbound. We thought about doing that. The trade authority of the Hawaii state.
We've talked to DBED, because it is like, and Senator Richards left, but it is, there's been efforts, but it's kind of like, what's going to be done with this data? And because we're substantially smaller than Puerto Rico, like our population is tiny. And like, so if you look at like large farms, there's literally 3. So it's like if you're trying to look at data, it becomes really easy to like pull it apart, and then you have like proprietary issues. So. And it's the same with imports. Like if you're talking about major importers, there's like again like 3. So yeah. Anything?
Okay. Great.